Hello everyone, my name is Mitt. Welcome back to the Daily Business Show. And did you know that I have $25,000 invested into Palantir? That is the meme that we are starting every video out with if the video is about Palantir. So, hello everyone, how are you guys doing? I want to talk today about something very important when it comes to Palantir. And this is sort of the entire logic and reasoning and philosophical foundation for why I thought the company was cool, and also why I invested $25,000 into it, as you guys know from the meme that is starting to become relevant and eternal on this channel. And one day it will be more than $25,000, and I'll start off by saying I've invested $35,000 into the company. Okay, anyway, 0 to 1. What does this mean? What is this philosophy? How does it integrate with business and life? First of all, who came up with this philosophy? So Peter Theil, for those who are invested into Palantir, you may know this name. For those who are not invested into Palantir, you may still know this name because Peter Thiel is one of the most legendary investors in Silicon Valley and probably in life, in the history of the world. Particularly because he put in $500,000, I believe, for I think almost 7% of Facebook back in 2004, 2005. He negotiated the seed round of financing. The seed round, for those who don't know, is the first round of financing that a company does. So you can do a seed round, Series A, Series B, Series C, Series D, all the way up until like G. And then at the point of Series G, you're either going to get acquired or you're going public, right? Because at that point, private money is not really useful anymore. So he was the first check into Facebook, or he was one of the first checks, and he saw something that people didn't see when Facebook was first becoming real. And the main thing that Peter Thiel saw, which is what ultimately made him such a legendary investor and gave him his start to his real investing career outside of his work in PayPal, which was also phenomenal, and we can talk about that in a second, was that he saw that real identity being associated with the internet was something that was going to propel social media into becoming the multi-trillion-dollar market opportunity that it was. Until then, people were using fake names and fake identities, right? Like Avatar3465 was like your username, and that's how you would use the internet. Whereas Facebook said, well, what if you call yourself Jake Smith, and Jake Smith has a girlfriend, and Jake Smith went to the University of Michigan, and now there's all these data points around Jake Smith that from Facebook's perspective is very valuable because now they can sell better advertising, right? Because it's hard to target an ad in front of Avatar346, but it's easier in front of Jake Smith when you know what Jake Smith actually cares about and his interests. And for Jake Smith, he gets to share his virtual life with the rest of the world and connect with more people, ultimately fulfilling the mission of what Facebook, the product was there to use, was intended for in the use case, which was connecting the world together. So Peter Thiel recognized that real identity was going to be the essentially the catalyst for Facebook becoming what it became, and then it became what it became. During that same time, Peter Thiel had also co-founded a company called Palantir with a bunch of other people, Alex Karp, one of the CEOs, and there's a bunch of other people. But the philosophy that Peter Thiel wrote about in his 2014 best novel, which is what we're going to talk about today, and how he implemented that philosophy into Palantir and ultimately into Facebook when he made the seed investment, is why I'm also very bullish on this company. Now, what is that philosophy? So 0 to 1. For those who haven't read the book, I do think it's a good read. I am getting less bullish on reading nowadays. I do think reading is just a waste of time, not because reading is bad, not because reading is not informational and it helps you visualize stuff and all this stuff, but I think the audio content of the book is pretty much what you need to get the gist of the content. Now, the actual act of reading, it's always a good thing. I suggest people do it. But I read 0 to 1 back in 2019. I didn't remember any of it. And I know this for a fact because I tried to tell myself what the main quote of the book is. And the main quote of the book is competition is for losers. That's the main quote of the book. And I was trying to think of it back in 2021 or a couple months ago in 2021. And I was like, what did he mean by that? And I really tried to dig deep because I hadn't revisited the thesis of the book in months or in years. And I thought Peter Thiel was saying like, oh, don't worry about your competition. Like, just focus on yourself. That's not what the thesis is. It's not that. That's what it sounds like, but that's not what the thesis is at all. The thesis is actually a lot more nuanced than is the foundational framework for why Palantir is so successful, and I think it's going to be more successful in the future because I have $25,000 invested into it, so I kind of have to believe that it's going to be successful. But no, it's going to be successful because of this foundational philosophy. And if it's not, then I guess the philosophy is wrong. But the philosophy seems to have a lot of merit to it, which is why I do believe that it's kind of a no-brainer to invest in this company. So 0 to 1. And before I got off track, the audio version of it, I think, makes more sense versus the book version of it, because you can just get more information and it's more efficient. So that's why I would recommend listening to the audio version of it. I'm going to link a video in the description of Peter Theil talking about it for an hour, and you guys can check that out. I think that will help you understand the thesis more in depth. 0 to 1 is the philosophy of how to get something from nothing, right? So when you're going from, when you're going from nothing to something, when you're trying to take 0, right, when you have an idea, a vision, or even half of an idea and a vision, and then ultimately turn that into something, whether that be a company, a brand, a business, whatever it may be, there's a process that needs to occur in order for that value formation to ultimately materialize. Now, that value formation is what Peter Thiel believes is creating a monopolistic business at the point where no other businesses have the ability to compete with you, i.e. competition being for losers, because you've innovated and you've gone from 0 to 1 in an industry that you control. So let me break this down. It's a really phenomenal idea, and I think it applies to business and it applies to life. Let's say you are wanting to start a search engine, right? Let's talk about Google. That's one of his famous examples. When you start a search engine, if you are able to be first in category, and Google was not the first search engine, but they were the best first page rank algorithm search engine in competition with Yahoo and Ask.com and all that stuff back in 1999 and the early 2000s. If you are able to be the best in an industry and have such a competitive advantage over the industry because of something you can do that your competitors can't do. Yahoo was not able to create the PageRank algorithm like Google was able to because Google innovated it. It was proprietary to Google, which is why even though they entered a crowded field, they had a competitive advantage that made them one of one. They had something where they could take 0, their idea of a proprietary PageRank algorithm, and turn it into 1. And when they turned it into 1, they became the only one. Essentially, they became a monopoly. This is also true to Facebook to an extent, right? So there was social networks before Facebook, but when Facebook innovated real identity, which is what I just talked about in the beginning, that's why I spent some time actually explaining the history between Peter Thiel investing because of that logic, that made Facebook a monopoly. It made them a sort of one-of-one company in which other people couldn't compete, because on all these other platforms you were using, these weird usernames, but on Facebook that was supposed to be your real username. LinkedIn was your professional network, right? So you're not posting like religious stuff on LinkedIn or political stuff. You're posting stuff that's going to get you a job. You're posting more political stuff on Facebook. Facebook can't really be a professional network. That gave a market opportunity to go from 0 to 1 with an idea of a professional network turning into a real professional network that doesn't have any real competition, because what other networks are there that you're going to post, your job history? It's like you don't really post that stuff in other places, but you post it on LinkedIn. How does this apply to Palantir? Palantir is one of those companies that has gone from 0 to 1. They innovated I don't know if it's necessarily proprietary. I'm assuming they patented a lot of it. I actually need to do research on that. See, I don't know everything in the world. I'm pretty sure it's patented. It's a very safe assumption, but likely a very proprietary patented technology around artificial intelligence that they developed. It actually has to be patented because they work with governments, right? So like other companies can't really use that type of technology, in which it is theirs, and it is very difficult for other companies to be able to compete because Palantir spent so long innovating that technology to the point where they are the leaders in that category, right? And when you are a leader in a category and there is no other search engine that can mess with you, there's no other social network that's going to mess with you, then you essentially have a monopoly. This is why competition is for losers. Competition is for losers is not like calling you lame or something because you're competing with people. It's that United Airlines, JetBlue, Southwest, they're all losers in the grand scheme of things because the margins are so low on those businesses. They have to cut air prices so much. They have to constantly pay for oil, even if they can't fill up the seats in the airplane. They have to constantly launch airplanes and pay for pilots and health insurance and all this stuff they have to pay for. And the margin is so minimal to run those businesses, but that's the necessary things that have to be done in order to run those businesses. Why? Not because there's a lot of overhead and business expenses, but because they are in a lot of competition for people flying places, right? If I don't like United, I'll go there, which means if this place is a little bit cheaper, I'll pick this, which means United has to drop its prices, right? That's how competition operates. That's how capitalism operates. But it's not the best business model to be in if you're trying to go from 0 to 1 and truly innovate, right? Because you're stuck in sort of a competitive landscape that doesn't give you the ability to be a leader in that category. Companies like Google, companies like Facebook, companies like Palantir, companies like Amazon, right? They kind of made e-commerce a thing. It's not because they were first. It's because they were best in class. They had competitive advantages, and they innovated around those competitive advantages to differentiate them so clearly from any other competitors that would come, which made them go from 0 to 1 and essentially have a monopolistic business to the point where they could create literally trillions of dollars of value for the people who saw the potential of those companies. I believe Palantir is one of those companies. I might be wrong. I don't know. This is not advice to go invest in it because of this video. This is just my understanding of how I'm trying to put the dots together between Peter Thiel's whole career, how he's created what he's created, how he's invested in what he's invested, and now this thing that he's been working on for 20 years that just went public, which is Palantir. I'm like, why wouldn't this guy who's applied the 0 to 1 philosophy his entire life, this competition is for losers philosophy his entire life, and has been successful in all these other endeavors, why wouldn't that apply to Palantir? Especially when you go deep into the company and you actually recognize, oh, wait, they're actually following the framework that Peter Thiel set out. And this is, to end it off, this is what I love about just technology and science and tech and people who have really big ideas is like they usually have a master plan, right? This was a master plan 20 years ago. And he was showing signs of it when he was making all these investments and all this stuff. And he was like, Palantir is going to be one of those things that 20 years from now is going to be another 0 to 1 company. And people are not going to see it coming because they don't even know the problem exists. And we're innovating to solve that problem, which means we're going to have no competition, which means we're going to create a lot of value for the shareholders who see the potential and vision of the company. So that's breaking down Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 philosophy. I really am just enamored with it. Definitely love that stuff. Let me know any other videos you guys would like to see, any other things you would like to hear me talk about. And I have invested $25,000 into Palantir, so it's very important for me to know these types of things and think about them very deeply. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.